Our theme is Don't Worry, Be Happy. So we're going to be hearing from some stellar speakers around the whole concept of how neuroscience impacts leadership, engagement, well-being and productivity. So these are really important topics for all of our organisations.
It actually starts with the people who have power owning it. We're living with one of the great unfortunate lies of the last 30 or 40 years, which is that organisations are flat, that everybody's everybody's friend, and that there is no hierarchy, or hierarchy should be disappeared. Until we acknowledge hierarchy, especially when those who have hierarchical position own the responsibility and the consequences of that for people around them, nobody's going to speak up to them. And what we find more and more is that the people who are most powerful experience themselves as most up the hierarchy. They are the ones who are blindest to the consequences of their authority and what they evoke in others. They aren't aware of the deaf spot that they evoke in the world around them.
So I believe in a high challenge, high support type of organisation. They're the ones that deliver the best. Speaking truth to power does mean telling it how it is. It does mean telling us sometimes things we don't want to hear, and I think where HRDs have a really unique role to play is that kind of assessment of the temperature of the organisation. You know, is the culture one where speaking to power, truth to power is valued, is welcomed, and things happen from it. So all of that data and contact with people that HRDs have really do the conditions exist for truth to power to really work? Well, what happens when you can't speak truth to power? What happens when those conditions don't exist? Organisations fail. You can have the best strategies in the world, but if you don't have the conditions that enable those strategies to fly, then I'm afraid ultimately you're going to fail. And it might be a catastrophic failure, or it might just be the clock being dialed back 5 minutes at a time.
One of the things that can happen when we're in an environment which isn't safe is that our brains physically start to close down. And I think it's really important to recognise that this is a physiological change, and it isn't a psychological, if you like. It's not a soft skills or fluffy thing. Brains actually stop functioning when they're under threat, and the environment that we're creating in work is actually a threatening environment. So the more we drive hard for targets without taking into account the humanity behind those targets, the more likely we're going to end up with people having their brains closing down. And the process of your brain closing down, which is sometimes called freeze, so there's fight, flight, and then there's freeze, but that process of freeze actually can lead to people being what I call zombified. So zombification is not your fault and it's not somebody else's fault. It's just a natural response to being in a very, very threatening environment. And it means that we just are incapable of problem solving, decision making, being creative, and even cooperating with other people. So this unsafe, uncertain environment that we're in is actually creating really poor levels of performance. There's no excuse at all for driving targets without taking into account that human beings are vulnerable. Are there people that will make mistakes? They're going to fail, they're going to be inadequate, they're going to be incompetent. All of that is normal, and we've got to stop having this view that we have to look good and appear perfect all the time, because it's actually making us very ill.
The key priority is that people understand that leadership is created not just by those people who are in formal roles of leadership, but in conversations, everyday conversations, in team working, in dealing with problems and challenges, in one-to-one conversations of support, in collaborative projects and so on. It is something which is generated by people who feel confident, valued, nurtured, and psychologically safe to question or challenge what's happening. It must be about creating environments that not only nurture and nourish people, but which generate ideas from them. Because one thing we definitely need is new ideas. We need innovation. We need constant improvement. And that comes from people closest to the ground in all parts of the organisation. They've got the ideas just ready and waiting. The most senior the leader, the more that he or she needs to talk and ask and listen to what they have to say. So those are some things that I think are critical in terms of the general environment in which to create, but also we've got to get the top people on board, willing to see what impact they're having on the culture of the organisation, because we also know that the further up the organisation we go, the more positive people are about the culture and how effective leadership is in the organisation. It's completely different from people at different levels. So we've got to create environments, whether it's a 360 for the team or whether it's they make themselves more accessible. They have to keep a finger on the pulse of how people are feeling and doing. And only then can you really embed a culture of engagement and valuing people. And the final thing I would say is what we've got to do much more effectively than we've done so far is to work more collaboratively across the organisation, across different teams and projects, but also most importantly across our communities, across agencies. And because there is extraordinary potential that is liberated when you get people working together and they're optimistic and they've got a strong sense of self-confidence and self-efficacy, and we can do this. Those are simple messages, that's all.
Key takeaways from today's session were really about the fact that we can only do differently by thinking differently. So the future demands us to be different, and the only way in which we can drive different behaviours for ourselves or for the team members that we manage and lead is by driving different mindsets. So I've talked about how we can create different thinking, different mindsets, different attitudes to drive different behaviours. I've talked about how to take greater levels of responsibility, move outside of the circumstance and situation, pushes us and pulls us in different directions, and understand our true power lies in ownership and accountability. I've also talked about belief systems. Belief systems are something which holds us in place. So what we need to do is to move outside of the mental tram lines that hold us in place, the things that we do on a daily basis, habitual thinking, and create new opportunities and new possibilities by driving different perspectives within the business.
I would like people to remember that it starts with you, it's all about you. 3/4 of the workforce are disengaged due to lack of appreciation. So what I'm saying is appreciate yourself, learn to appreciate yourself, because once you are a happier individual, that will scientifically ripple out to the people that you work with into your home. I'm also saying in this session that it's not okay to be a lemon sucker, and a lemon sucker is somebody who isn't a happy person. Lemon suckers impact so massively in the workforce that it's actually not okay. We need you to be a positive individual in the workforce, for you to be more productive, for your teams to be more productive, and just as well to start enjoying life a little bit more and remember those simple things that make you happy and start doing them.